In this video, I will analyze this high-level biblical and cultural conversation between Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson. I will use this logic to explain God's covenant with Israel, the culture of the Israelites, the crafty counsel, confederacy, and devices which were used by the nations to hide the truth and hide the Israelites' true identity from them and the entire world. You're gonna love this. Let's go.
No one can do it better.
If categories dissolve, especially fundamental ones, the culture is dissolving because the culture is a structure of category. Mm-hmm. That's what it is. Right. So, and in fact, culture is a structure of category. Roughly speaking, we have a bedrock of agreement. That's the Bible, by the way. So I just walked through the Museum of the Bible in Washington. That was very cool. It's a very cool museum.
So the structure, that's what the Bible
Yeah, it's what
provides.
I figured out. I just figured this out this week. So it was a cool thing to walk through because it's chronological. They have one floor which is the history of the Bible. Mm. But it's not exactly that. It's really what it is the history of the book. Now, in many ways, the first book was the Bible. I mean, literally, because at one point there was only one book. Like, as far as our Western culture is concerned, there was one book. And for a while, literally, there was only one book. And that book was the Bible. And then before it was the Bible, it was, it was scrolls and it was writings on papyrus. But we were starting to aggregate written text together. And it went through all sorts of technological transformations. And then it became books that everybody could buy, the book everybody could buy. And the first one of those was the Bible. And then it became all sorts of books that everybody could buy. But all those books, in some sense, emerged out of that underlying book. And that book itself, the Bible isn't a book, it's a library. It's a collection of books. So, in any case, we were talking about meaning in text because we were talking about translation and the problem of understanding text. And Jim said, the meaning of words is coded in the relationship of the words to one another. The meaning we derive from the verbal domain is encoded in the relationship between words. So now then you think, well, let's think about the relationship between words. Well, some words are dependent on other words. Some ideas are dependent on other ideas. The more ideas are dependent on a given idea, the more fundamental that idea is. That's a definition of fundamental. So now imagine you have an aggregation of texts in a civilization. You say, which are the fundamental texts? And the answer is the texts upon which most other texts depend. But because those texts influenced more other texts. And then you think about that as a hierarchy, okay, with the Bible at its base, which is certainly the case. Now imagine that's the entire corpus of linguistic production, all things considered. Now, how do you understand that? Like, literally, how do you understand that? The answer is you sample it by reading and listening to stories and listening to people talk. You sample that whole domain. You build a low-resolution representation of that inside you, and then you listen and see through that. It's that the Bible is the precondition for the manifestation of truth, which makes it way more true than just true. It's a whole different kind of true. And I think this is not only literally the case, factually, I think it can't be any other way.
Wow, Jordan Peterson has no idea the way that I'm going to be able to use this for the edification of Israel. So first we have to look at culture. He said that the culture is a structure of categories. Let's look at what the culture is for the Israelites, and most importantly, to start, what it's based on. The culture of Israel and the Israelites is based on the covenant that Yahweh has with Israel. Okay, now, so that gets us to the Old Covenant and the New Covenant. Starting with the Old Covenant, Exodus 19, verses 3 through 8. And Moses went up unto God and called unto him out of the mountain, saying, Thus shalt thou say to the house of Jacob and to the children of Israel. So this is being said to the Israelites, which come from Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. Ye have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagles of wings, and brought you unto myself. Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, because it's based on a covenant. This is Christ, this is the Father making the covenant with Israel. Then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. So here he's putting us above all people. There is no equality here. And ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, because the kingdom of heaven is made up of his priests. Okay, it's made up of the Israelites and also the other nations as well, but we are that ruling class in the kingdom of heaven. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel. And Moses came and called for the elders of the people and laid before their faces all these words which the Father commanded him. And all the people answered and said, all that Yah hath spoken we will do. That's us making the covenant. And Moses returned the words of the people unto Yahweh. Okay, so that very plain spelled out, very easy to see. Let's move to the next verses here. Exodus chapter 24, verses 1 through 8. And he said unto Moses, come up unto the Father, thou and Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and worship ye afar off. And Moses alone shall come near God, but they shall not come nigh, neither shall the people go up with him. And Moses came and told the people all the words that the Father and all the judgments, and all the people answered with one voice and said, all the words of Yahweh has said, we will do. That's us affirming that covenant. Verse 4, and Moses wrote all the words of Yah, and rose up early in the morning and built an altar under the hill, and 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Israel. This is all based on Israel. This is our culture, and this is the covenant in which the culture is based on. You got to get this first. Verse 5, and he sent young men of the children of Israel, which offered burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offerings of oxen unto the Father, because in that time there were the blood sacrifice. And Moses took half of the blood and put it in basins, and half of the blood he sprinkled on the altar. And he took the book of the covenant and read in the audience of the people, and they said, all that Yah has said we will do, and be obedient. That's us again affirming the covenant. Verse 8, and Moses took the blood and sprinkled it on the people, and said, behold, the blood of the covenant, there it is again, which the Father hath made with you concerning all these words. So there again you see that covenant. Last verse on the old covenant. Let's go to Psalms 147, verse 19 and 20. He showeth his word unto Jacob, his statutes and his judgments unto Israel. He hath not dealt so with any nation. So he's only done this with the Israelites, with the nation of Israel. It's plain as day. And as for his judgments, they have not known them. Praise ye the Father. All praises. So that is the old covenant in detail that the Father has with the Israelites, with the nation of Israel. Now on to the new covenant. The new covenant, let's go to Jeremiah 31, verses 31 to 33. Behold, the days come, saith Yah, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. So remember, in this time, the kingdom was split into two. The house of Judah and the house of Israel, okay? There were two kingdoms. Verse 32, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they break. Although I was a husband unto them, saith the Father, because we broke that covenant, so we had to make a new one. Verse 33, but this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Father, I will put my law in their inward parts and write it into their hearts, and will be their God, possessive, their God, and they shall be my people, possessive, my. So this is showing that the old and the new covenant, this is the new covenant here, that the Father made it with the Israelites. And that is what we base the culture of Israel on. All praises.
If categories dissolve, especially fundamental ones, the culture is dissolving because the culture is a structure of category. Mm-hmm. That's what it is.
Right.
So, and in fact, culture is a structure of category. That's the Bible, by the way.
Okay, Jordan Peterson, as he's talking to Joe Rogan, is speaking about the culture, that culture is a structure of categories. So culture is a structure of categories. First thing we need to do is let's define culture. Culture, the customary beliefs, social forms, and material traits of a racial, religious, or social group. The characteristic features of everyday existence, such as diversion or a way of life shared by people in a place or time. Look at B here. The set of shared attitudes, values, goals, and practices that characterize an institution or organization. So when you speak about Israel and the Israelites, our culture is made up of a few things. So as Israelites, our culture is made up of these four categories, the way that I like to put it here. The laws, statutes, and commandments, which we kind of went over in the first part. There's a covenant that God made with us as the Israelites, and there are certain laws that we have to keep. You guys know about the 10 Commandments. I believe there's 613 of all of the laws altogether. But the laws, statutes, and commandments are the things that we must keep in terms of being Israelites. The next thing is the feast days and the Sabbath that I'd like to speak about. We don't keep Christmas over here. Okay, we're not doing that. We don't keep Easter. We're not running around grabbing eggs. You know what I'm saying? We're not getting up under a tree trying to find gifts, because back in the day, you were the gift under the tree. Just so you know that. We're commanded to keep the feast days as well as the Sabbath, which is the day of rest. So here we have a chart of the feast days. Actually, we have coming up the Feast of Trumpets coming up, the Feast of the Day of Atonement, and the Feast of Tabernacles. Those are all coming up here. But this is a chart which just shows the feast that we are supposed to be keeping. And all of us as Israelites, you need to start keeping these feasts. You got to start doing it. It's a part of it. It's a part of our culture. It's a part of who we are. It's a part of the covenant that we have with Christ. Okay, Yahweh Shai. So the Passover here, you see it. These are the verses that kind of go with it. I'm not going into that right now. You got the Feast of Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, Feast of First Fruits, Feast of Weeks, Feast of Pentecost, Feast of Trumpets, Feast Day of Atonement, Feast of Tabernacles. Then you got verses down here below which kind of explain a little bit more about them. But that's not the crux of this video. I just wanted to put up a chart here so you guys can see the feast days in which that we're supposed to be keeping, as well as the Sabbath day. We're supposed to be keeping the Sabbath. So here's the verse on the Sabbath day that I want to add in here. Exodus 20, verses 8 through 11. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And again, these are given to the Israelites. Though the other nations, I urge the righteous Gentiles out there called by the name of Yah to be keeping these days as well. Verse 8, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, though nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy maidservant, nor thy maidservants, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days God made heaven and earth and the sea, and all that's in them, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore Yahweh blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. So here's our commandment to keep the Sabbath day. I wanted to give you that in scripture, as I always like to do. So next, after the feast days and the Sabbath, which we've gone over, let's take a look at the language. Let's talk a little bit about the language here. Language, as some of you guys know, I don't deal with the modern Hebrew. The reason why I don't deal with the modern Hebrew is because it's false on its face. In law, there's something called prima facie. Okay, so that means that like the case has been adjudicated based on its face, just based on the preliminary information that was given. So that's the same thing with the modern Hebrew. Because modern Hebrew has as its first word modern, it's already false. Because the Bible, the scriptures, the scrolls are based on ancient times. So my point is, they were never speaking modern Hebrew because modern Hebrew did not come into existence until much later on, thousands of years after the Israelites in their ancient form in the Bible were roaming the earth. So it's already false. I don't deal with the modern Hebrew. I know some of you do, and that's all good. Do what you do. But me over here, we deal with the ancient Phoenician. So allow me to go ahead and give you an example here of the ancient Phoenician. This is the alphabet here, the ancient Phoenician. This is how they wrote it in the times of the scriptures. Okay, this is how it looked. and the pronunciations were different, obviously, as well. So this is the ancient Phoenician alphabet here. This is what we're rocking with. Next, here you can see this is Yahweh in the ancient Phoenician. Looks like Zephi, but that's the way it looks in the ancient Phoenician. Also, here's the scrolls here, so you can see that well, actually, this is a tablet. So you can see the ancient Phoenician was written on the tablets. You see a brother here with some locks as well. So yeah, so this is just another example I wanted to bring out of the ancient Phoenician, which I go by on tablets. Next picture here. This is Yahweh. You see that there? That's the same spelling as we just saw here. See that? See this? Now look here. See that? That's the same thing. That's on the tablet. That's the spelling of Yahweh, which is God, for you guys to know. Yahweh, that is God the Father. So that's it there, the spelling there on a tablet in the ancient Phoenician. More proof. So, and then here it is here on a rock that they found here. And these things also can be found in Latin America. They're all over the place. Anyway, so here's just another example of the ancient Phoenician being written on rocks, and we've seen it now. So that was my breakdown there of the ancient Phoenician language, which is a category as a part of our culture. Remember, we're going through the categories of the Israelites, of Israel. The law, statutes, and commandments, which we saw in Exodus with Moses. The feast days and the Sabbath days, which we just went over, okay, as well as the Sabbath. And now the language that we went through. Now let's get to some more here of the good part. Okay, it's all the good part, but let's get to the good part, the promises. Let's start with Romans 9, 3 through 5, written by our cousin Paul. So here we have Romans 9, 3 through 5. Very, very important verses here. Listen up. For I could wish that myself were accursed from Christ for my brethren, my kinsmen according to the flesh. The brethren and the kinsmen are his blood people, and the brethren in the Bible are the Israelites. And now moving forward, as it says here, look at this, verse 4. Who are Israelites? Who are Israelites? It just doesn't, the Bible is so plain. It speaks so plain, but a lot of this stuff has been hidden from us. But now here at the end, we're bringing it out, and I'm bringing it out. So, who are Israelites, to whom pertaineth the adoption. We were adopted back in because we had broke the first covenant, and the glory. That's has to deal with the kingdom of heaven and us, our rulership in heaven, and the covenants. That's the covenant that we have with Yah. Okay, our part that we have to keep, and he says that he will be our God and protect us. And the giving of the law, because the Father gave the law to the Israelites. He has not dealt so with any other nation. And the service of God and the promises, whose are the fathers, and of whom, as concerning the flesh, Christ came. So he came for the flesh, Israelites, who is over all. God blessed forever. Amen. So the promises here has to do with us receiving the kingdom of heaven and our rulership in the kingdom of heaven. And let's move to Luke, to our brother here, Luke. Luke chapter 1, verses 68 through 73. Blessed be the God of Israel. The God of who? The God of Israel. He is the God of the Israelites. Plain and simple. For he hath visited and redeemed his people. Notice the pronouns. His is possessive because the Israelites are his people and are his portion, and has raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David. That's why salvation is of the Israelites. And like I said in a previous video, eternal life and salvation are not mutually exclusive. So the righteous Gentiles called by the name of the Father and of the name of Christ shall be in heaven and receive eternal life. But the Israelites receive the entirety of salvation, which include other things which I'll get into that are coming right now in these verses. And he spake by the mouth of his holy prophets, who are Israelites, which have been since the world began, that we should be saved from our enemies. This is a part of salvation, being saved. We have to be saved from our enemies and from our persecution that we're going through on this earth, and from the hand of all that hate us, because we're at the bottom of society. We're hated and treated badly, but it's all good. That's temporary. Our eternal rulership in heaven is forever. Verse 72, to perform the mercy promised to our fathers and to remember his holy covenant, the oath which he sware to our father Abraham. These are the promises that he swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that he gave all to the Israelites. All praises to the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. It's plain as day. Rewind this if you need to see that further. Take screenshots. Share this information. Next clip.
If categories dissolve, especially fundamental ones, the culture is dissolving because the culture is a structure of category. Mm-hmm. That's what it is.
Right.
So, and in fact, culture is a structure of category. That's the Bible, by the way.
He uses the word dissolved, but instead of dissolved, let's throw in the word destroyed. Okay? So, as you see here, there are a number of ways in which Israel was destroyed, starting with number one, with slavery. And you guys, we got to remember, we broke the covenant that the Father had with us. It's our fault. It rests on our shoulders. We will be redeemed in the end, but we got to take ownership for that. We broke the covenant, and because we broke the covenant, we received this: slavery. The yoke of iron on our neck, as you see there. The slave ships, packed in like sardines. Many of us didn't make it. Slavery is what we reaped because we broke the covenant that the Father made with us that he didn't make with any other nation. He will redeem us. He will be back to redeem us very soon, and we will rule with him forever. But this is the reason why we went through slavery. So the next thing they did was the miseducation of us as a people through religion. So starting from the top, Israel was dissolved, which means destroyed. They did it through slavery because we broke the covenant. It was done through the miseducation, through religion. And religions are based on the Bible with paganism mixed in, such as Christianity, Catholicism, and other religions. Then they introduced many different versions of the Bible and different Bibles to hide the truth from us and to change the meaning of some of the verses so we would further be hidden. And then the crafty counsel, because the crafty counsel was done by all of the nations who are confederate against Israel. And what they did was they gave us a fake God and a fake people. So we went through number one, which was slavery, because we broke the covenant. Now on to number two, which is the miseducation through religion. So here, a tenet of Christianity is Christmas. This is not biblical. This is actually pagan and paganism. So you get that Christianity bringing forth Christmas, which we all have followed. I did too at one time when I was asleep. Okay? Haven't had a Christmas tree in my house in 12 years. Can't even remember it. And Christianity is really what has put its tentacles around the house of Judah. You know, so now Catholicism for the house of Israel, which are the Latinos and the natives, they were bound by Catholicism. So here you see your friendly neighborhood priest here. I'm joking. But here you see him here. Tons of idolatry in Catholicism, tons and tons of paganism, you know, in all the religions. But Catholicism is that evil church which the Father hates. Wanted to make sure I bring that out there. Also, the spirit of the Antichrist runs throughout the papacy. It goes through the priests. of Catholicism. The spirit of the Antichrist runs through the priests in Catholicism. It's a very interesting point, but that's not what this is about. Okay, if you guys want me to go into that further at some other point, let me know in the comments. So we were miseducated through religions, mixed with paganism, being Christianity, Catholicism, and other religions. Then next, point 3, is the different Bibles and versions. Take a look at this. This is a list of the different versions of the Bible. Look at all of these. It just continues. These are all different versions. We use the King James over here. I urge you guys to use the King James Version. I think there's about 100 different versions. I'm not even going to go through all the names of these, but you get the idea. They have taken the words of the Father, they have changed them, and as it says in the Bible, that those that have taken the words and have changed them will receive all the curses within the book. So there are curses waiting for those who have done this, but there are just so many different versions now of the Bible. It is unbelievable. I recommend that you stick with the King James Version. Another thing that they did was they introduced the slave Bible. So in times of slavery, they had a Bible which was called the Slave Bible, where they had taken out about 80% of the scriptures, because they know if they showed you certain scriptures, you're going to realize that this book is talking about you. You know, when we were in bondage and slavery, they used the Slave Bible. They took out 80% of it and only left in the parts in the Bible talking about being a good slave and obeying your master and things of that nature. And also remember that in the slave days, we were not allowed to read. We weren't taught to read. We were punished if we were found that we could read. That was another way that they miseducated us, because they put themselves in a position where they taught us, where the enemies were the ones that were teaching the Israelites. So we've gone through here points 1, 2, and 3. Now let's move on to the crafty counsel and being confederate against Israel. For this, we're going to go to Psalms 83, verses 1 through 5. So, Psalms 83, 1 through 5, it says, "Keep not thou silence, O God, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God, for lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee." So they've consulted together. They're confederate against us. All the nations, as I've said before, know who we are. They all work together to put Israel in slavery and to make us hidden so that our name could never be in remembrance again. Because once we are in the power of our God, we're invincible, and all the other nations are, have to bow down to that power. Then verse 3 there says, "They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones." Here's some of the crafty counsel. Some of that crafty counsel is a fake God and a fake people. That's crafty counsel. Let's take a look at that. But first, let's go to Job 9, verse 24. "The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he?" So they're covering the faces of the judges. Let's take a look at that. This is what we were given. We were given this as so-called Christ, okay? And this here, people, is them covering the faces of the judges thereof. This is them painting black Christ white. There it is. Some of you may have seen it. Some of you may not have seen it. But this is them actually painting Christ, who is black, who is an Israelite, white. That is covering the faces of the judges thereof. And they replaced him with this. A fake Jesus, a fake white Jesus. He is not white. His name is not Jesus. His name is Yahawashi in the ancient Phoenician Hebrew. All praises. And this is an old one. Christ and his disciples painted wooden panel in the Coptic Museum of Cairo, Egypt. So this is what they look like. This is your relatives. This is what Christ looks like, and the disciples there. You see him with the froze. You see the color of their skin. You know, this is what it is. This is who it is. This is who we are. And then the last point here, they gave us a fake people that came in place of the Israelites, that took the place, that replaced the Israelites. A fake people. Let's take a look. This is, and these are the fake people. Okay, I just want to leave it at that. These are the fake people that are taking the place of Israel for a time, for a season, but our time is coming. All praises. Let's keep it moving.
So I just walked through the Museum of the Bible in Washington. That was very cool. It's a very cool museum.
So the structure, that's what the Bible
Yeah, it's what
provides.
I figured out. I just figured this out this week. So it was a cool thing to walk through because it's chronological. They have one floor which is the history of the Bible. But it's not exactly that. It's really what it is the history of the book. Now, in many ways, the first book was the Bible. I mean, literally, because at one point there was only one book. Like, as far as our Western culture is concerned, there was one book. And for a while, literally, there was only one book. And that book was the Bible. And then before it was the Bible, it was it was scrolls and it was writings on papyrus. But we were starting to aggregate written text together. And it went through all sorts of technological transformations. And then it became books that everybody could buy, the book everybody could buy. And the first one of those was the Bible. And then it became all sorts of books that everybody could buy. But all those books, in some sense, emerged out of that underlying book. And that book itself, the Bible isn't a book, it's a library. It's a collection of books.
So here, Jordan Peterson tells Joe Rogan that it's more of a history book. And it is more of a history book. Okay? It's the history of the Israelites, but it's also more than that. It's the instructions for the Israelites, for what we need to do, and it defines our culture. He says the Bible was the first book. That's incorrect. The first book was the book of Enoch. And Enoch, another one of our relatives, was the first person who could read or write. And he wrote the book of Enoch. He was the first one. Okay, so I just wanted to make that clear. And before our manuscripts and scrolls were put into a book form, we were just simply reading the scrolls and reading the tablets. And it was passed down to us. In conclusion, the culture of Israel was destroyed by the destruction of the categories. They say you don't have to keep and follow the law. Don't keep the feast days. Keep Christmas, Easter, and Thanksgiving. Don't observe and worship on the Sabbath, which is Saturday. Do it based on the pagan theology of Sunday. Don't use the real ancient Phoenician language, which is how you get the real name of the Father and Son, Yahweh and Yahweh. They say use modern Hebrew, which gives you Yahweh, which is an evil god Israel followed in the wilderness when they fell, plus Yeshua and Jesus. These names are based on modern Hebrew, which the Israelites never spoke, and there is no J in Hebrew. The J came 1,000+ years after Christ's death. They lied about the promises and salvation which are given solely to Israel. They now say it's for everyone, and I showed the covenants are only with Israel, for he has not dealt so with any other nation. The culture of Israel was further destroyed and hidden through fake religions. We are not religious, but they hid it through indoctrinating us in Christianity, Catholicism, and other religions. We are not following a religion. This is our culture, and Yahweh is our God, the God of Israel. They gave us a fake God and painted Christ white from black. They covered the faces of the judges thereof. They gave us a fake people to replace the Israelites, who are the KHAZARS, who say they are Jews but are not. They also gave us many different versions of the Bible, plus the slave Bible, to hide the truth of who we are. And not to forget slavery. Slavery was used for the destruction of Israel so that the name of Israel would no longer be in remembrance. In addition to that, our enemies miseducated us about the Bible and who we are, plus we were forbidden from reading. And all the nations are confederate in this against us. But I do have great news. We are in the last days. Israel, our time is upon us. It won't be long now. So once again, I want to offer up my thanks to Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson for the high-level conversation, which I was able to utilize for the edification of the nation of Israel. This is Crown Prince Media. I am the Crown Prince. Let's go.
No one can do it better.